I had always thought my little slice of suburbia was peaceful, the kind of place where everyone waved at each other over white picket fences, where disputes were settled with neighborly chats rather than lawyers and threats. But that illusion shattered the day I decided to mark my property lines properly. After years of vague, overlapping fences and dodgy boundaries, I finally hired a licensed surveyor to make things official. The surveyor assured me the corners were well within my deed, that my land was exactly as I thought it had been when I bought it. I felt a surge of pride as he planted the small metal survey markers into the ground. They were modest things, easy to miss unless you knew they were there. To me, they were proof that I had a right to my property. The next morning, I stepped outside, coffee in hand, to admire the markers. That's when I saw Karen, HOA Karen, as she was known in the neighborhood. She was standing near my fence, arms crossed, her expression one part outrage and two parts self-righteous fury. I had encountered her before. She was the president of the Homeowners Association, a woman who seemed to thrive on other people's discomfort. She had a reputation for obsessing over trifles, like whether your mailbox was exactly 1 inch taller than the HOA regulations allowed, or if your hydrangeas were slightly off color for the season. I knew from experience that Corinne could make life miserable if she wanted. But this was something else. "I saw you put those stakes up," she barked, pointing to the shiny markers. "Do you know you're not allowed to alter landscaping without HOA approval?" I raised an eyebrow. "These aren't landscaping stakes, they're survey markers." "I had a licensed surveyor place them. This is my property." Corinne's face turned an alarming shade of crimson. "I'm calling the police." "This is a violation. You can't just—" She fumbled for her phone. "Put up whatever you want." I sighed, already anticipating the drama. "You can call whoever you want, but these stakes are legal. They're on my land. You're welcome to verify with the surveyor." Within minutes, the police arrived, responding to Corinne's call. 2 officers, polite but cautious, stepped onto my property. I explained the situation calmly, showing them the surveyor's certificate and pointing to the markers. Karen interjected at every turn, raising her voice, accusing me of trespassing, of violating HOA rules, of disrupting the peace of the neighborhood. One of the officers shook his head slightly, looking between Karen and the survey stakes. "Ma'am, these stakes are on the property line according to the survey. If that's true, she's within her rights." Corinne's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She had no prepared response. She was visibly shaking, a mix of rage and panic. The officers asked her if she had proof of her claim, any documentation showing that my property had encroached on her land. She didn't, not a single scrap. As the officers left, I breathed a sigh of relief. But Corinne didn't go quietly. She muttered threats about lawsuits and fines, promising to take this to the HOA board. I knew her threats were largely empty, mostly bluster. But I also knew she was dangerous in her persistence. Over the next week, I noticed subtle signs that Corinne was escalating her campaign. My garbage cans were moved, my garden lights tampered with, and someone, or rather, Karen herself, kept leaving anonymous notes on my doorstep warning me to remove the markers. I stayed calm, documenting everything. I photographed the markers, kept copies of the survey, and even recorded a few interactions from a safe distance for evidence. Then I decided to investigate further. Something about Corinne's sudden panic didn't sit right with me. I had dealt with petty HOO presidents before, and usually their wrath was contained to trivial annoyances. Her reaction suggested she had something to hide. So I dug into public records, checking property deeds, past surveys, and HO documentation. And that's when I found it a glaring inconsistency. Corinne's own fence line didn't match her property deed. She had encroached at least 3 feet onto my land, using my property to expand her garden and part of her patio. It wasn't subtle. Anyone with a surveyor's eye could see it. The markers I had installed didn't just define my land, they exposed her illegal encroachment. Armed with this knowledge, I felt a sense of vindication, but also the weight of strategy. Confronting her directly could trigger more chaos, so I played it smart. I shared the information with the HOA board quietly, providing them with certified survey data and photographic evidence. I explained that my markers were legitimate, that Karen's fence extended beyond her property line, and that the encroachment violated both the HOA rules and local ordinances. The board initially hesitated. Karen was persuasive, and she had been a long-time member with a strong voice. But once they saw the evidence, there was no denying it. Karen's face turned red as the board members discussed her illegal expansion. They asked her to adjust her fence and garden to comply with the survey and threatened penalties if she failed to act. Meanwhile, Karen tried to rally neighbors against me. She spread rumors, claiming I was aggressive, that I had violated HOA rules, that I was trying to intimidate her. But the more she tried, the more her story unraveled. People began comparing the survey stakes with her property lines, and the truth became undeniable. Karen's hypocrisy was on full display. I didn't stop there. I took extra steps to protect my property. I installed a small camera near the markers, discreet but effective to document any further tampering. I kept the surveyor's certificate close and maintained clear communication with the HOA board, ensuring there would be no further misunderstandings. Months passed. Karen's influence waned as the HOA enforced the rules fairly. The fence was corrected, her garden adjusted, and she was officially reprimanded. I finally felt at ease in my yard, walking past the survey markers that had sparked all the drama, now symbols of justice rather than conflict. The incident left a lasting lesson. Some people, when confronted with the truth, react with anger, desperation, or manipulation. Karen had chosen to escalate, to threaten, to call law enforcement for a non-issue. But facts don't lie, surveys don't lie, and documentation doesn't lie. By staying calm, by being meticulous, and by letting evidence speak, I had turned her aggression into my vindication. And the best part? Every time I glanced at those small, unassuming survey markers, I felt a quiet triumph. They weren't just pieces of metal, they were shields, protecting what was rightfully mine, exposing what wasn't, and reminding me that patience, preparation, and a little legal know-how could outmatch even the most determined HOA Karen.